What is a struggle men have that women will never understand? Interacting with a child and instantly getting seen as a P. Once headed out with my 3-year-old niece to a playground. Half an hour later the police were involved. Needed my sister to clear things up. I once stopped a toddler from running into the road. His mother was shouting after him but he was absolutely legging it and she was pushing a pram and couldn't keep up. I crouched down and put my arms out to gently stop him. Once he stopped, I pointed back to his mother and said something about her calling for him. She took another 10 seconds or so to catch up, at which point she gave me the most scathing look before grabbing her child's hand and storming off. I replayed the incident in my head a few times because it was just really strange. I wondered what I could have done differently. I get that there are predators out there, and that any stranger going near your child might make you anxious. It's just in my opinion it was really clear that I was only trying to help. It's embarrassing for some people to admit they need help. I would have said, "Thank you," and walked away. Please know that was her problem and not a you problem. The moment someone like her decides to escalate to the police, all of a sudden it becomes a you problem. That's so effed up. I'm so sorry. Being expected to be able to step up in scary situations when you are scared less yourself and don't want to either. When my husband and I were first married we used to live in a tiny mobile home next to a field of horses. Well, most nights I would hear footsteps, like it sounded like someone was just walking around in the living room or suddenly running. Bless my husband, I don't know how many times he checked the whole house for me, then grabbed a flashlight and baseball bat and went outside around the whole home. He said he was so tired most times he was basically sleepwalking and likely would have been murdered if there was really someone there. Lol, come to find out, it was just the horses in the field next to us I was hearing. It was super weird and freaked me out for the longest time. Pro tip: fear and courage feel the same. Fear is just the inability to act on the face of that feeling. But you can always choose to act and be courageous. First you face your fear, then you get the courage. I was the victim of domestic violence, and was laughed out of the police station when I attempted to report it. I knew a guy who had a big argument with his GF and she ended up throwing a pot of boiling water at him, leaving him with third-degree burns in his left shoulder area. He then went to the police and they said that he had probably done something to his GF, now ex, to justify her doing what she did, and in general they just laughed him off. In these types of situations, men are not really taken seriously and it's become a big problem. What the F? Nothing in this world could have been said to justify SH like this. Western society culture does not do accountability for women generally, and this is especially true in situations that involve violent or sexual conduct. This is a problem that is getting worse, not better, as more and more victimhood narratives replace responsibility. Yeah, it's quite bemusing when people say it's a gender discrimination issue that police don't take women seriously or do anything about it. Like, holy SH, have you ever seen a guy try to get help? It's not that they don't do a pretty SH job for women, but it's way tougher for a man to be taken seriously as a victim of DV or SA. And let's not even get started about what happens if the woman turns around and falsely says she's actually the victim and just retaliated. Our society is failing everyone on this issue. I was beaten into hospital by my ex, and when I went to get help I was yelled at and forced out of the domestic violence help place. I've had a F-ed life, and honestly, when I was told I'd be dead by 40 I cried, ruining my life where I was. Now I'm counting down the days hoping the doc was right. Trying to find the balance of being emotionally vulnerable and masculine in such a way that maintains attraction. This leaks into communication, outward behavior, and darn near everything in a relationship. I always get a similar vibe to lead me, when I'm in the mood to be led, like we can be emotionally vulnerable, but only when the people around us are in the mood to see us being emotionally vulnerable. Holy SH, this describes exactly what I'm going through with an old friend of mine who I've always had a crush on. She said she's always had a crush on me. About a year ago, I'm sad enough alone. Had an abusive alcoholic last girlfriend, and darn did that ever F my trust up more than I could have imagined. Losing my mother this year to leukemia. My best friend and biggest fan. This girl knows my whole past and everything I've been through. Knew my mother very well, and my whole family for that matter. I just feel like she wants me when she needs me, and I always want her and can never get her to be with me on a regular basis. It honestly sucks. She'll often text me, "Hey love, wanna hang out tonight?" I of course say yes, and then she ghosts me for a day or two, completely ignoring just a text message. Then all of a sudden come to my house randomly and or call me to ask for help doing something or going somewhere. We're both 28 years. Oh, in the past month she's professed to wanting to settle down with me, that I've turned into the man of her dreams this past year, opening my own business and digging at it through thick and thin. Wants to have and raise children together, and then does this cyclical ghosting SH all over again. It's paralyzing, I cannot explain it in a better word. And now I just feel like I can't search for a partner without hurting her. But I honestly don't know if she feels anywhere near the same about me. Thanks for this thread to vent. Dude, this girl isn't it? It's not a gender thing, but she just sounds like she's emotionally very immature. That's not normal behavior. Also, it's weird that you having a business is what she likes. I think it might be time to move on. Fist of iron and a heart of gold. It's effing exhausting to try and maintain. Being looked at as a pervert or weirdo for taking your kids to the park or store or anywhere. Any age too. Newborn all the way to teenager. Or being told we are good dads for babysitting for the day. WTF, I am not babysitting, I am parenting. And I enjoy taking my 7-year son places like AutoZone and Lowe's. Male parenting is dwindling in our society and it shows. I'd argue the opposite. I'd think that there's a history of a lack of male parenting. And seeing examples to the contrary are why people think it's such a stand-up thing. I mean, think back to the 50s, where men were expected to work, and women were expected to parent. I think this babysitting ideology is based off of, and inherited from, that generation of parents. Male parenting isn't dying, it's growing, and people aren't used to seeing that. Hopefully that isn't the case in the near future. Funny enough, in the early 90s my uncle during the summer weekends would take me and my sisters to 711 to get Slurpees and candy. We were around 812 years old. Now picture this, my uncle, your stereotypical Italian American named Vinny from New York, driving a work van. He'd open the big sliding door and we'd jump out the van and go into 711 with this big and very intimidating looking guy. But in the end it was just my uncle taking us to get some treats. I'm glad I was a kid in the 90s and not today. I can't imagine what would happen today if someone saw this. If we don't express our emotions in a way that matches expectations, usually through actions and body language, they generally aren't received or taken seriously. Even when communicated clearly, it typically doesn't matter how we say we feel. Then if we go so far as to have an outburst like yelling or crying, the emotions are finally understood and taken seriously. But they change people's opinions of us, and usually in a negative way. There is no "I was just upset" excuse for us. We have to remain in control at all times because we'll either be considered too scary or too weak. But in doing so, we're constantly told that we don't open up enough. You're either stoic, happy, prideful, or angry as a man. Embarrassment, guilt, shame, melancholy, sorrow, those complex emotions do not even look like they were made to be acknowledged by men. Even though surprise is hard in places, it's rather more powerful to be calm in those situations. Edit, I forgot the most unacceptable one. Fear. Words, men should express their feelings and be vulnerable more. Actions, ew, oh my god, really? That's how you feel? My wife and I are very affectionate with our young son. Tons of hugs and kisses. I know that there will be a point where he will no longer want that from me specifically, but will be okay with her still showing that kind of love. I have boys. They are both in their 30s and have never reached this point. They hug their dad as much as they hug me and hug dad harder because I break. He doesn't. That's awesome to hear. Our goal has always been to make sure he knows he's loved, so if he doesn't want the physical affection, he'll still get the verbal ha-ha. I'll admit that the next time I see the younger one, I will be ignored. For a good reason. I have a new kitten that he hasn't gotten the chance to meet yet. Boy loves cats and will be too busy romancing my baby to pay attention to mom. I still hug and kiss my dad plenty. You can't control how your kids will feel about it. But if you raise them showing that kind of affection, they will certainly come to view it as normal. Modern society can view us being totally useless but somehow in charge of everything. Or getting your cock caught in a zipper a la Something About Mary style. The latter is probably the worst thing. I take advantage of popular media constantly portraying men as utterly incompetent and helpless. Whenever I need something from someone, like a customer support type of scenario, I massively play into this. I pull the "I don't know anything. My wife asked me to do this, so please help." If I'm dealing with another guy, they will be sympathetic. And if I'm dealing with a woman, they will take pity on me. 9 out of 10 times it gets me what I needed quickly and easily. As long as every show and commercial is going to keep saying middle-aged married men are PSY whipped idiots, I'm going to keep using that perception to my advantage. Pretending to be stupid because he couldn't be bothered to think and wanted someone else to do it for him. Pretending to be outrageously stupid to hide the fact that he actually didn't understand what was going on. And really being genuinely stupid. He was renowned for being amazingly clever and quite clearly was so, but not all the time. Which obviously worried him. Hence, the act. He preferred people to be puzzled rather than contemptuous. You are here. I wasn't expecting to identify with Zaphod Beeblebrox today, but here we are. Getting your foreskin caught in pants zipper is no fun. Had to rush to hospital to get zipper destroyed to get it out. Whoa, ouch. F in heck, bro, your foreskin must be as strong as a bungee rope? Being accused of kidnapping my kids while taking them to the playground. That was fun. Women going out of their way to avoid me when walking on a street, crossing the street. I get it. But wow, does it hurt. Feeling crushing anxiety and not being able to show it to basically anyone. My wife interprets it as me being unstable, unable to be the provider. Even my therapist assumed I was just not wanting to face my demons and that I need to get over it. Gotta keep it in. Being really sick and told it's man flu. Having me sense of self-worth basically pinned to my ability to earn money. Very specific, but illustrates the point. I once was at a conference and I saw two ladies walking ahead of me. One was carrying a purse by its handle and it was hanging down. The purse was unzipped and stuff was starting to fall out as she was walking. I ran up and interrupted and pointed out the purse was open and stuff was about to fall out. They both looked at me and asked why I would be looking at her purse and called me a creep and walked away. Sounds like you need a new therapist. One who is understanding and approaches things with compassion. Moral of the story. Let people feel the consequences of their behavior. You'll make it wrong anyway, according to them. If it's going to be your fault anyway, it might as well be your fault for acting oblivious in a stereotypical way, rather than being helpful and getting accused of something more serious. People suck. Talking about your mental health. In recent years I've become more open about it, but a lot of the men around me just won't open up about it. There are people I know who have ended their life because of mental health issues. I think it's a difficult conversation no matter your gender. But a lot of men are told to suck it up or told that men don't cry so they have to keep it all inside. We always hear side statistics but no one ever talks about 80% of sides are male. I thought that women attempt side more but on average men are more successful. Does that hold water? Kind of makes you wonder about the psychology behavior surrounding the act. Side is generally an act of spontaneity. Men are more likely to choose more destructive forms that one doesn't have chance to save, such as firearms or hanging. Find this interesting website from University of Washington. Totally this. Before my wife, talking about mental health was only for my therapist. Even my mom would get annoyed if I tried talking about it. If you ever need someone to vent or share ideas, you are more than welcome. I had a situation in that I overheard my fiance's mother once say to her in very different words that men have only two emotions, rage and horny. Basically sounded to me like she thought all men with emotions were just con men lying to get S. You can also be angry and horny, so she missed at least one. This is why I think it's funny when people say those feminists dislike men. A large percentage of women do not like men. Not just the feminists. Married housewives with kids and grandkids are often the people who dislike men the most. Middle-age loneliness. Particularly for married guys with kids. If you're not a middle-aged bro douche, you probably have no friends. None. Maybe you're amiable with work colleagues. Maybe you have a game night with some neighbors. But they're barely more than acquaintances. Your last friend was 10, maybe 20 years ago in the before times. Seems like it's almost a societal expectation at this point. I blame societal expectations. Up to college people can essentially walk up to each other and become friends. But as an adult you can have an insane amount of similar interests. Spend time with each other constantly. But for some reason you aren't friends. It makes no sense. Also, what's wrong with making friends at work? Excluding potential ethics issues, they are literally the only people you spend time with every day. You are going to eventually find someone that you like, and denying that bond is stupid. People at work are friends until they are not. Also a liability. Nobody cares about you and sympathy simply doesn't exist for people like you, so you're completely left to fend for yourself. This was especially apparent after the death of my baby daughter after only living 20 days in the hospital. The only time I got to hold her was when she was actively dying. My wife's friends and strangers checked in on her and sent her love and support and still check in on her. I don't remember the last time someone asked me about my daughter or how I feel. That's horrible. I'm so sorry for your loss. How do you feel? May I ask if your daughter had a name? Thank you for your words. I feel empty and cold. Decades of ignoring or overcoming extreme feelings to be the stable one in the room has left me seemingly without the ability to feel the extreme emotion without actively trying to. The reason I only held her at the end is that I spent her entire life worrying about her and her mother. I focused on her care. She had HLHS and died during recovery from open heart surgery, and spoke with the doctors and nurses. I made sure my wife was taken care of and was eating and staying healthy enough to be by her daughter's side the whole time. It was only after she died. I arranged everything with the hospital. Donated the leftover frozen breast milk, drove my wife home, and got her settled that I finally broke down. But only briefly. Then it was back to the business of caring. And her name is Maya. Older single guy here. We're on our own. Nobody wants to touch us. No platonic affection. Nobody wants to help us. We need to figure it out for ourselves. Nobody will be there for you. You have to accept that. Crippling loneliness is a given. I know I will die alone. I just want to know, why the heck is it taking so long? Same, friend. Trying to figure out if she's into you, or just being nice. The way I heard this explained a few years back really struck me. Imagine how two people would react to water. One is dying of thirst in a desert. The other is drowning. One considers water an absolute necessity. The other it's a darn nuisance. This is men and women regarding affection and romantic interest. Men are starved of it, so lavish it on any women they like. Women get too much of it, often unwanted, so dish it out sparingly. Yeah, but I have female friends who are relatively affectionate with me, even though they don't actually want any romantic interactions. Some of them even have boyfriends. They just are that way because they trust me, and it's still completely platonic. It's the situation where if a woman has received a whole lot of unwanted attention, she will be very careful about showing any interest in a man. Some men get truly nasty when they are turned down. When she's comfortable that you aren't going to proposition her, put her in an uncomfortable position, and potentially ruin the relationship. Then she's okay with showing affection. They say there's someone out there for everyone. That's not true. There's guaranteed to be at least one man that nobody wants to F. Speaking from experience, there is not one woman alive my friends would not try to F. Do beer goggles or going hogging apply for women? Do they ever get horny enough and desperate enough to say F it? I'm going home with the orc, because so many guys do. There are terms for it. No, because it's not necessary to do that. I don't want to say most, but many men will sleep with a woman that they don't like or don't find that attractive just to have S. So a woman can always have a one-night stand with a man who's more attractive than her. It will just take some swiping on Tinder. The reason is that for one-night stands, there is always more men available for it than there are women. So it's just about numbers. It's not okay to be a stereotype who tells a woman to get in the kitchen and make me a sandwich. But it's acceptable if not downright encouraged for a woman to knock me for not being able to lift something heavy, saying you're a man. You're supposed to be able to do this. Whether we like it or not, we are still expected to adhere to our traditional gender role. To protect, to provide, to lead, to be strong physically and emotionally, etc. Even by the so-called feminists. Otherwise you're useless. Even if they don't tell you, you'll notice it through their actions and behaviors. That most people assume you're some sort of predator of sorts. Trying piss with an erection while sitting on the loo. TMI, I just go to my backyard and let the 5-foot stream fly. Ah, that means you need the giraffe mod. Ever see a giraffe drink water? Same. The everlasting circle women put us in where they want us to communicate openly and honestly, and then when we do, we have to justify what we said and spend a half hour explaining how what we said wasn't an attack on them but rather a logical statement. It gets annoying to the point I don't care to have an opinion anymore. I've found that at least half the time this happens, we are addressing two separate things. Typically the guy is stuck on solving answering a problem and is on a single train track of thought, whereas she has moved on, he's addressing another concern from an adjoining track. How is every woman in this thread simultaneously evolving into a nice guy spewing whatabouts and well for me? Like the point of the thread is literally no one asked you. There are a million other places to discuss these issues from a co-ed perspective. But you feel the need to try and come shoot dudes down on a thread that attempted to allow dudes to talk openly about their experiences. Public boners. I was gonna say the split stream is a less understood struggle. I think women understand the problem with boners. Trust me, I have some female friends in their late 20s who still think men can control their male reproductive organ like a muscle and turn them into a boner at will. Or that every time they get a boner, they want S. Trying to ask out women with little to no signals to go on. Having to approach and initiate every romantic interaction without coming on too strong and not seem like a creep. Not being believed when it comes to SWAL harassment. I was sorely harassed by a girl in my class a really long time ago, and when I told it to the school they didn't do anything. Both of my parents got involved and they still refused to do anything to the girl who was harassing me. Sorry that happened to you. And nice that your parents believed you and stood up for you. Just how effing lonely it is. You are expected at all times to be a simultaneous combination of guardian, emotional caregiver, leader, and provider, on top of being relatively successful and 100% independent. And you have to always be these things, 100% of the time. It's emotionally exhausting. I know that readers may see this and list any number of the various advantages our unfair society affords men. And I won't argue that they aren't there, but I will state that I feel, and probably many other men would agree with this, that society doesn't really care about the emotional, mental, or social health of men. Chris Rock famously said that only women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. Men are loved under the condition of what they can provide. I agree with that statement. It's incredibly dehumanizing and dispiriting to constantly be told what society expects from you and wants you to be, as if all you are is a paycheck to support a family or a fearless leader who exudes strength and never falters.